Hey guys, it's Jambros, and welcome back to my Phase 5 Loot Guide series. Today I'll be reviewing Beast Mastery Hunter. This will cover all of the relevant item drops in Sunwell Plateau and compare them against each other to give you an idea of what may or may not be good for a Beam Hunter. Before we jump into the gear, let's go over some of the sims, parameters, and general methodology I use in comparing the items. I used the WoW TBC Classic Simulator this time, different from what I used in the Phase 3 and 4 guide, but the sim's now pretty well supported. All appropriate raid, party, and personal buffs and debuffs will be applied here. It's purely single target. These sims are done against a high armor boss, but with the prevalence of armor pen in this tier, and hunters get a lot of it, low armor boss gear sets will be explained as well. Since a large majority of the bosses in Sunwell are demon, I went ahead and simmed these with demon slaying. These sims use complete gear sets and don't just sim individual items. When changing gear out for testing, I'll sometimes change one piece out for another to keep, say, a 2-piece or 4-piece bonus, or change gems around to optimize a hit rating. And all these sims use full BIS gear for Phase 5 and compares the best in slot item to the next best item in that slot. While the default sim is a 7700 armor demon, aka Brutalist or Muru, the rest are all 6200 armor, and gearing differences will be explained. The talent spec here is fairly typical for Beast Mastery. There's really not many points to move around. And here's a full Phase 5 Sunwell decked out BM Hunter. Keep in mind this is the absolute best in slot for a high armor target. And Hunter has quite a few gear changes against low armor targets, as shown here. I'll be going over the gear swaps per slot. We'll start with the Helm slot. The Quaff of Valeria takes the top spot, and unlike many of the other physical DPS classes, the Duplicitous Guise is not very competitive. It is useful in a 9% hit set, if you're not running with a balanced druid, for example, but is otherwise pretty comparable to the Cursed Vision of Sargeras for hunters. Hunters do want their hit in 3 specific slots, and the Helm isn't one of them. Putting hit here results in wasted item stats or making unfavorable item swaps. You could get a little usage out of the Season 4 Helm if you never got Cursed Vision. The Tier 6 Helm is shown here with the slot completing the 4-piece. It's not the best. I mean, it has MP5 on it. I didn't list the NG goggles, but it comes out a few DPS ahead of the Tier 6 Helm configuration. The neck isn't as clear-cut for hunters as it is with many of the other physical DPS either. The Hardcoreum Choker against high armor targets is always better with its 150 armor pen. Against low armor targets, and especially with the legendary bow, Clutch and Demise becomes better by about the same margin. They could very well both be considered best in slot depending on the encounter and the rest of your gear. The Choker Serrated Blades is still a solid option until you can get one or both of the new neck pieces. The Phase 5 Reputation Necklace is not good for you and should not really be considered. The Tier 6 Shoulders from Black Temple is your ideal holdover piece to maintain your 4-set bonus. There are very few scenarios where this won't be the best setup for you while gearing up. The Mantle of the Golden Forest is the only other option. Everything else is comparatively non-viable. Vehemence is a poor hit option, and Demon Tooth is even worse. There's only one new cloak in Phase 5, the Cloak of Unforgivable Sin, and hunters want it just like everybody else. This cloak is 42 DPS better than your next best option when fully geared. Until you down kill Jaden and convince everybody else to give you this cloak, all the previous options are close to being equal. Fiends plays well with Thoradal, Dories plays well against high armor targets, and Shadow Moon can be an option if you're short a little hit rating. There are a few upgrade paths here from your previously best in slot Tier 6 chest piece. None are particularly significant except for the Bladed Chaos Tunic. It's a trade-in item for an item that drops off of Muru. It's an exceptional item and is best against both high and low armor bosses. Your second best option is the Vicious Hawkstrider Hauberk, and provided it drops, is a very easy piece to acquire. Unlike the Chaos Tunic, it's basically uncontested. If you happen to be a leather worker, you can craft a chest piece for a moderate upgrade. I like the Carapace of Sun and Shadow more than Embrace of the Phoenix. Despite having hit, even if it's almost completely wasted, it's still a better overall item than the Phoenix chest. This brings us to the first of the 3 new tier pieces in Phase 5, the Bracers. There is no real competition here for best in slot, as everything else is hilariously far behind. Not only are they a giant increase in raw stats, but not having these equipped means you have to have an additional tier piece on your main set to continue to have your 4-piece bonus. Those two together combine for 90 to 100 plus DPS losses. 4 other bracers are compared here, and the Insidious bands are on top, but really anything here works until you enter Sunwell and get that bracer token. The Tier 6 gloves are your second best option as your fourth piece for the set bonus, behind the shoulders. They are an individually strong item, and there are only two reasonable options to upgrade them. Either the Thalassian Ranger Gauntlets from Kil'jaeden, or the Gloves of Immortal Dusk, which is a crafted bind-on-equip item that requires sun motes. These are functionally equivalent pieces. The Ranger Gauntlets provide a slight DPS increase against high armor bosses, but are a contested item. Against low armor bosses, they are almost exactly equal, but the crafted gloves are much easier to obtain. The belt is the second of the three new tier pieces, and again, no competition. The DPS differences are actually pretty insane here. Total DPS losses of 100 to 120, including the raw stats and switching one other main set piece to tier 6. It's worth noting that this is the first of the three hit pieces you would ideally be wearing, making this a high priority item for hunter gearing. The legs are the second of the three ideal hit pieces. The top three choices here all have hit. Your absolute best are the leggings of the Immortal Knight, but these are an extremely contested piece. You'd be very fortunate to get these first or even second. However, there are two very easy to acquire pieces that are an upgrade from your Phase 4 best in slot tier legs. The Starstalker leg guards are not a contested piece and drop off the first boss in Sunwell, and if you aren't a rushed upgrade for a bit of DPS, the trousers of the Scryer's Retainer can be bought for 100 badges. To use either, you'll need to have gotten at least one new tier piece to keep your 4-piece bonus. The feet are the last of the three new set pieces, and also the last of the three ideal hit pieces. These boots are truly massive and blow everything else out of the water. All your other options are right around the same level. If you're a fresh or returning player, the Tabby boots are 60 badges, and the new Sunrage treads from normal Magister Terrace are good options, and they represent the floor of what your boots should be. The Band of Ruinous Delight is your number one overall best ring in Phase 5. If you get it, it stays equipped at all times, whether it's a high or low armor boss. Angelisa's Revenge and the Signet of Primal Wrath are virtually identical. There's only a 1 agility difference, and the armor pen they provide make them second and third best against high armor targets. Against low armor targets, these two rings drop off significantly as you acquire more and more armor pen elsewhere. The Hardcorium Band is a very strong ring by itself in any setup, and is actually crafted and bind on equip. Against low armor, the Hardcorium ring takes over against the two armor pen rings, and is better to the tune of like 30 DPS. If you are looking for an all-around set, then I would go with the Corium Band and one other until you get Ruinous Delight. The Hyjal Rep Ring, Band of the Eternal Champion, is not bad, but is sort of your poverty option. It sims about as well as the unlisted Storm Range Signet Ring, except the Signet Ring also provides any needed hit while you're gearing up. A new absolute best trinket for, I'm sure, all physical DPS shows up in the Blackened Naru Sliver off Muru. Second best, however, is more dependent on different factors. Against high armor targets, like this chart shows, Sliver and DST are the best combination at all times. Against low armor targets, it depends on if you have the legendary bow or not. If you do have the legendary bow, Berserker's Call is actually better than DST by about 13 DPS. If you do not have the legendary bow, it flips, and DST is better than the Berserker's Call by about 13 DPS. Outside of a combination of those three trinkets, Madness or the Ash Tongue Rep trinkets are your best options. Now that we're on to the Hunter melee weapons, there are varying options between two one-handers and two-hand weapons. Your overall best in slot main hand weapon is always going to be Hand of the Deceiver off Kil'jaeden. While ahead of the next best weapon by about 19 DPS against the high armor target, this is relatively unrealistic. Your enhancement shaman and non-glaive warriors and rogues will also want this and actually punch the boss with it. After that, if you're sticking with two one-handers, your options are the non-armor pen Crux of the Apocalypse or with armor pen Shiv of Exsanguination. These are not contested at all and should be easy pickups. Crux will be better against low armor bosses, and the Shiv will be better against high armor ones. The Shiv is your best offhand, and it's a basically uncontested item. Mounting Vengeance, the offhand fist weapon, is a contested item, but drops off trash and is barely behind it. These two weapons are only better against high armor targets. This is an easy slot to drop armor pen for low armor targets. In that case, Crux of the Apocalypse takes over as Biss. Grip of Manaroth is another non-armor pen option if you need the hit for any reason. Alternatively, you could use a two-hand weapon instead of two one-handers. This is the easiest and most immediate upgrade path for hunters. The Shivering Fellspine drops off trash, covers both of your melee weapons, is uncontested, and is an upgrade for your best in slot Phase 4 weapons. While it's a ways off from your true best in slot, I definitely recommend starting here and then you work your way up with the one-handers available. I listed a poly in here too, but that's mostly a joke. You should go to your arms warriors and rets first, but it has a ton of stam if you really need it for survivability. When it comes to ranged weapon, it should be obvious, but this is the biggest upgrade in the game for hunters. The legendary bow, Thoradal, is a full 231 DPS upgrade from your next best non-legendary golden bow of Quel'Thalas. This is huge, and I wish you guys the best luck in obtaining it. For everybody else who doesn't get it, you may have to settle for the golden bow off Twins. This is a large upgrade over the Season 4 weapon, which itself is a bit of an upgrade over the Phase 4 best in slot Bristleblitz Striker. Now, I've mentioned high and low armor bosses pretty frequently in this guide, and that it has to do with the ideal amount of armor pen on your gear. You might be asking, am I capping it out? And the answer is yes, often, especially as a hunter. Here's a chart with how much armor is left on a fully debuffed boss. You will never cap your armor pen against the 7700 armor boss in Sunwell, which are Brutalist and Muru himself, but not his ads. However, Hunter is able to amass a huge amount of armor pen, and a geared Hunter can easily overcap against 6200 armor, which is every other boss in Sunwell. With a fully debuffed boss, your armor pen cap against low armor targets is 1708. Anything over that is completely useless and totally wasted. A fully armor pen geared Sunwell Hunter can reach 2,257 armor pen, more than 500 over the low armor cap. This means you're going to have a significant amount of gear changes depending on which encounter you're in to maximize your damage. These are mentioned earlier, but for an overview, these are your strongest switches from armor pen to non-armor pen pieces. I'd recommend running the Clutch Demise as soon as you can get it for a neck piece. Both of these daggers are uncontested, and provided they drop and you are running one-handers, they make an easy switch to gain or lose armor pen. You'd also change your second ring slot from the armor pen ring to the Hardcorium band, which is a stronger item overall, and not a bad choice to pick up as soon as you possibly can, especially since it's crafted. The gloves are probably the least important slot, but you do drop some armor pen and would be my first choice to run with 24/7, as they both still have armor pen and you don't have to compete for a drop. Changing all those items out brings you down to 1,757 armor pen, which is right around the cap for low armor bosses. And that's it. I'd really appreciate it if you guys liked or subscribed to help support this channel. If you have any questions for me, feel free to drop them below in the comments, or come watch me on my Twitch channel and ask me there. Hope everybody's having fun in the Sunwell. Thanks for watching.